Hi, I'm Ira.
And I'm Ari, and welcome to today's edition of the Irari Report. Today we're here talking to Chris Inglis, former Deputy Director of the NSA.
We're going to be talking to Mr. Inglis specifically about Edward Snowden, the damage he caused, the potential international implications, as well as what companies can learn from Edward Snowden's transgressions and how to better secure their organizations. Last year, or maybe I guess it was last year, we had at this conference Stephen Colbert, and he made a comment to the effect, well, first Snowden goes to China, then he goes to Russia. Was Mordor not accepting asylum applications? Now, to that end, there's been thoughts and there's been speculation as to why Snowden did what he did. Frankly, the first place he goes to China, he said he was on his way to Argentina, and last time I looked at a map, Argentina was the exact opposite direction of China. So theoretically, it can be speculated that Snowden was an agent recruited by China. I've had other people who said that Snowden was potentially recruited by Russia as well because he did a lot to subvert U.S. relations with European countries and within the population. We spoke to Ray Semko, who's a former defense counterintelligence analyst. He just said that Snowden was a person who was pissed off, who didn't get the salary he wanted. And I guess with that in mind, with the news that Snowden also was fired from the CIA, or was under investigation from the CIA before he resigned, about speculation that he was trying to hack other people's emails and files, what is the formal belief of why Snowden did what he did? Was he acting as an agent of a foreign government, or was he self-recruited to just do what he did for whatever reason and found welcoming arms in the hands of China and then Russia?
First, I have to point out that I don't represent the United States government anymore. I'm no longer in an official capacity, and so I wouldn't know what the official position of the U.S. government is any more than I would know the absolute truth of what Snowden's thinking was and all the machinations that he went through to do what he did. But here's what I surmise based upon a careful observation of the facts available to me. It does seem clear that his intention was to go to Latin or South America after he revealed all this material in Hong Kong. He worked very hard, and his lawyers worked very hard on his behalf to actually achieve that in the days and weeks afterwards. It doesn't seem to me that a destination of China or Russia would be preferred. And his indiscriminate release of information tells me that he likely wasn't careful in the things that he sought to acquire and to release any more than he was careful in his plan for how he was going to escape. This was something that was done on the fly. It wasn't carefully thought through. I can't imagine that his plan A was to arrive in Moscow and essentially be in virtual isolation in a foreign country. It probably is a nice enough place to be, but it's not home. It's not the society that he claims that his principal affiliation is with. So I don't think that he was in the employ of the Chinese or the Russians. I don't see any evidence that would indicate that. And even if they're careful in terms of practicing denial and deception, I think there would be certain telltales in there that would work out more crisply, more cleanly, separate and apart from where he's wound up. In terms of what Snowden's rationale was, why he did this, I think it's very clear. He's an angry young man. He's very polished. He's very articulate. But the indiscriminate harm that he's levied on the United States and its allies around the world, and the intelligence means and methods that they bring to bear, speaks of someone who essentially has an internal rage, right? A rage that is sufficient that he wasn't careful. He wasn't the least bit discreet about the things that he purported he had an adherence to and his ability to then describe those. He said he was worried about the violation of U.S. person privacy. Most of the information he released has nothing to do with that. He said that he could prove that the United States violated U.S. person privacy beyond the reach of law, beyond the constitutional norms that are established. There's been no proof of that. Now, we as a matter of policy might decide that we're uncomfortable with collecting telephone metadata. That doesn't make it illegal. Bad policy or a different choice about policy doesn't make it illegal or unconstitutional. And in the country that I was raised in, the same country that Mr. Snowden was raised in, we have a system of laws that say we're all bound by those laws. We cannot take the law into our own hands, become vigilantes, and essentially exercise that judicial jurisprudence as a nation of one. So my sense is that Mr. Snowden, for whatever reason, was trying to get even, trying to get mad. He did that. He was indiscriminate in that. He's now left with the pieces of his life in a faraway place, trying to figure out how he comes back.
So when I was an NSA employee, in theory, I couldn't spit without hitting something that involved Russia or China. That's not a secret. However, Snowden has released 1 million documents supposedly saying I took everything of relevance that might impact domestic surveillance and everything like that. Russia and China arguably have domestic surveillance efforts that put the whole whatever he disclosed to shame. I have yet to see a document released about Russia or China's domestic surveillance efforts. Do you have a comment on why that might be, or is it possible Russia and China are withholding the information, and he purposely withheld that information so as not to antagonize his hosts?
Like you, I do find it curious that Snowden, who is now kind of in the protective embrace of Russia and who once enjoyed the protective embrace of China, has said nothing about those legal regimes, which most independent observers would say runs roughshod over civil liberties, human rights. I find it curious he would not say a word about that. But it's consistent, actually, with what he said while he was in the United States. Nothing. He made no complaint to anyone about what he now observes, what's in his view, a violation of U.S. person privacy. He said nary a word the whole time he was at the National Security Agency, nary a word the whole time he was at the CIA. When asked about that by Jim Bamford, I believe 2 years ago, the spring of 2014, he said he had at one time raised a question to an NSA lawyer. When we went back and took a look at that, it turns out the question that he asked was, are the priorities that were kind of articulated to me in a class that I took on the protection of U.S. person privacies, the U.S. Constitution, an equal priority between law and executive order, and then policies, regulations, and the like. Lawyer came back same day answering that question from Mr. Snowden saying, no, that's not exactly right. Turns out that a statute, a law, trumps an executive order. They're only on the same line in the priorities table because in the absence of a law, an executive order stands in. If that's a complaint about the protection of U.S. person privacy in the United States of America, I'm hard-pressed to see it. I'm hard-pressed to understand it. Having raised not one question about that issue while he was here in the United States, my assumption is that Snowden doesn't have the courage of his convictions when he thinks he might be held personally accountable for standing up and defending those convictions. It's not an official position, but that's how I feel.